On Saturday, it begins again. Currently, every team is on 0 points and the table is done on alphabetical order. But what do I think it will look like on the 20th of April? Yes, hello everyone and welcome to my personal prediction for the 2023 to 2024 National League season. Now of course on Saturday it does all begin again. It's going to be a long season ahead for all the teams involved, and let's kick this off, and we're going to be going from bottom to top and in 24th place, and I really do not take any pleasure whatsoever in saying this, but unfortunately I am going to have to go with Southend United. There's just way too much going on behind the scenes and all that just now. Of course, there is a massive threat that there could be deducted 10 points next month if the debts aren't cleared and what have you. And Ron Martin just seems to be playing some sort of game which, when people's livelihoods and things like that are at stake, really isn't right. I believe they've still got a transfer embargo and stuff like that. So it's really desperate times at Southend, and this prediction could be based on just a complete lack of squad depth that's completely out of their hands, or they could even be expelled. God forbid that happens. So unfortunately, I am going to have to put Southend rock bottom. In 23rd place and second bottom is a team that people seem to tip to get relegated every year, but they never seem to actually do. But I am going to say that this will be finally the year to drop, and it is Maidenhead United, of course, a part-time outfit. I think the need to be full-time in the National League is just getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and I think it is going to be a tough old year for them. They are, of course, a bogey team. They're a lot of people's bogey team, it seems to be. They always seem to grind out results against your big teams like your Chesterfield or your Barnets and teams like that, and end up finishing 20th or something like that. I mean, the road they looked massively at the back end of last season. I think it was by about 2 points or something they stayed up, and there was still a technical chance it could have been relegated on the last day. I mean, it did need a pretty almighty goal swing between them and Torquay, and obviously that didn't materialise to anything, and they just stayed up. But I think this year I do fear for them a little bit, I'm not going to lie. In 22nd place, I've gone for newly promoted Oxford City. Now, I think what you might find with Oxford City initially, they are a bit of a small fish in a big pond. I mean, no disrespect to them on that. I mean, they have done remarkably well to get to this level, but I think the jump between the National League North and the National League South these days into the National League in comparison to what it used to be is just absolutely massive, and I'm just really not sure they've got the resources to be able to go up with it. I think you might find initially they might take a few results off of teams you maybe wouldn't expect in the early part of the season, but I think as it goes on, I think they may be a bit behind in terms of fitness, in terms of that a little bit of quality and things like that. So I think eventually they will fall, but so unfortunately I'm going to have to send them down. In 21st place is a club whose National League status has lived a bit of a charmed life in previous years, and I think this year they will finally drop, and it is Aldershot Town. Now I think they will run it close. I do think there is the quality within the squad to win quite a good number of games, and I think there will be quite a bit of a gap between 21st place and 22nd place, and not really that much of a gap between 19th, 20th and 21st, but I just do wonder about the players that they've lost and the players that they are bringing in. I mean, by the sounds of it, they have had a good pre-season, but I think ultimately now pre-season is totally irrelevant. I've seen it that many times over the years where a team could have an absolutely blinding time in the friendlies, then the league comes about and they're a sack of crap. And I mean, I don't think Aldershot will be to that extent, but I think over the course of the season, I do think they are going to be figured out and stuff like that. I mean, I'm not sure about the manager's experience at this level as well, so I think that could be a really key factor in this. In 20th place and just about keeping their heads up above water, I've gone for Wealdstone. Now, Wealdstone have been really quiet in the transfer market this summer, which has been strange, but they've managed to keep Maidenhead on as manager, which I think is going to be a massive thing for them. The thing with Wealdstone is it's never like they're a team. They always work hard. It's never an easy place to score. It can be very awkward to play against at times. And I think that kind of ruggedness is what could just about see them over the line, in my opinion. So I think just about keeping their heads above water in 20th is going to be Wealdstone. In 19th place, I've gone for another part-time side, and it is Dorking Wanderers. Now, this is a club with clear ambition. I think they one day want to be in the Football League, but I don't think that's going to be something that's going to happen anytime soon. I think a lot of people maybe expected them to go full-time this summer. There was a major announcement from Mark White that they sort of built up throughout that whole day on social media not that long ago, and but it just turned out it was the club was going to become partially fan-owned, and I think that's a risk, but I think it's one that, given the story of where they come from, it's something that people will be invested with, but it's not going to be a smooth transition. Like, you're not going to get great results from it overnight, so I think this year maybe be a little bit similar to last year and might drop down a few places. I think teams will sort of gradually have figured them out a little bit more this year, but they will be okay in 19th place. In 18th place, I've gone for one of the sides relegated from League 2, and it is Rochdale. Now, I think Rochdale in some ways reminded me a little bit of Scunthorpe from last season, and I don't think it's going to be as drastic. I think they will obviously have enough within the squad over the season to keep their heads above water, but I think in the first few weeks what you might find is they will definitely have their welcome to non-league moment. I mean, especially when you look at some of the fixtures that they've got early on, like a lot of the teams are very non-league by tradition, really. So I think they're going to be maybe regarded as one of those that teams will naturally raise the game against. I think you might get to, I don't know, maybe the Christmas sort of time, and it could be sort of lingering in the relegation zone a little bit, but then I think that's maybe the time that they'll get together and think, right, we've really got to pull our fingers out here and make sure that we're not dropping into the National League North. But maybe a little bit like what Oldham did last season and what Leyton Orient did when they first dropped into the National League. So I think it's going to be a tough season for them, but I do think they will keep their heads above water. 17th place is one of the newly promoted sides, and it is Kidderminster Harriers. Now, Kidderminster are one of those sides that predictions for them seem to be. But I think if you've got 100 people together and you ask them where do you think Kidderminster finish, I think 50% of them would say they get relegated. 50% of them will say that they survive. I'm in a survival camp for them, I must say. I think obviously it's like they are coming into it as a full-time team, which I think is a massive help, and they remind me a little bit of Gateshead when we first came into this division. Actually, I think it might take a lot of players a bit of time to adjust to that step up. I mean, as I mentioned with Oxford City, like the jump between the National League North and the National League South into the National League is a very, very notable one these days, and I think what you might find is similar to us, like they might be getting towards the back end and in the midst of a relegation battle, but I do think over the course of the 46 games they will get enough wins and enough points on the board to survive maybe relatively comfortably in the end. I think they might do it with maybe 2 or 3 games to spare or something like that. 16th place, and possibly the most controversial on this list, but Hartlepool United. Now, a lot of predictions I'm seeing for Pools have them there or thereabouts within the playoffs, but I think with Pools, there's just too much baggage behind the scene. I mean, John Askey is a very good manager. We all know that. I think like the recruitment hasn't been that bad. They've kept a lot of the players on that you'd think might do well in the National League, but I think the issue for them is Raj Singh. I really do. Like you saw with John Askey last year, where he was working with a chairman that interferes too much at York City, and look what happened there. And I mean, I really hope I'm wrong on this, because I actually don't mind Pools at all, but I can maybe see a similar thing happening here. Like I think again, like one of the bigger clubs in terms of the division, like in terms of the history, like the fan base and stuff like that. So it's one of those that teams maybe will naturally raise the game again. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on them as well. So I think it's going to be a tough first year for Hartlepool, I must say. 15th place and dropping down a few positions on last year are FC Halifax Town. Now I think this is mainly down to the fact that that squad, I think, did they get them in the top half in the end? It was certainly the higher end of the bottom half, or into I think it was the top half actually on it. And of course, unfortunately, at the expense of my team, won them the FA Trophy. Like a lot of that squad has gone on. I think like so the Diasaru has gone to Pools. Jesse Deborah looks as though he's going to be getting a move into the Football League, etc. But I think I think they'll be relatively comfortable. I don't think they'll have any major relegation worries throughout the course of the season, but I certainly don't think they'll maybe reach the heights of what they did last season. I believe their manager Chris Millington was saying in an interview the other week that they were trying to compete with Altrincham and Gateshead for the same players, but those two clubs had a bit of a financial edge on them, so that just maybe shows us the money issues behind the scenes at Halifax. I think either way, I think it'll be maybe a bit of a mundane season for them in the league, I must say. 14th place, I've gone for Dagenham and Redbridge. Now they've maybe made a few under the radar kind of signings, and they could potentially maybe be a little bit higher, but I think from the outside looking in, the squad does scream mid-table a little bit just now, I must say. But as I said, this could be one that I'm extremely wrong with, but I think at this moment in time, I think like they're far too good to get relegated. I will say that. I mean, a few predictions I've seen, I've had them down like maybe in the relegation zone, or maybe they're just about staying up, but I don't think they'll have any issues like that or anything like that. I just do think, like Halifax, I think Daggers fans are in for a bit of a dull kind of season, if I'm totally honest. 13th place, I've gone for another newly promoted side, Ebbsfleet United. Now obviously champions and absolute canter in the National League South in the end, and that kind of momentum can't go unnoticed. And as well, they did manage to keep Dominic Pollian, I think he's called, who was their top scorer, so I think that's going to be a major factor for them. And you look at that sort of recent history, they are a bit of a club that yo-yo a little bit between the National League and the National League South, but I think in terms of where they're at as a club now, I don't think they're going to have any like major issues. But then again, I don't think this season really needs to be anything too spectacular for them. I just think like for them, if they can maybe get to Christmas and think, right, we're not going to get relegated, but chances are probably not going to go up either. I think that would be fairly satisfactory for them. It might be a sort of club that you might see them go on and run in the FA Cup or the FA Trophy or something like that. But I think, I think they'll be the top of the bottom half, I'm going to say, for Ebbsfleet. In 12th place, I've gone for Altrincham. Now, Altrincham are a club that a few weeks ago many regarded them to be a bit of a dark horse, and can maybe see why with some of the signings they made. I think getting Chris Clark back was absolutely massive for them, and there could be a sort of side that could flirt with the playoffs a bit, but I just think over the course of the season they're not quite going to have enough, but I do think there is the quality within that squad to finish in the top half. I mean, personally, I do really rate Phil Parkinson as a manager and things like that. So, and you've got to remember, like, he's been there a few years now. They've obviously got Man United on the doorstep that they could maybe get some promising young loan players from and things like that. So I do think they will push on into the top half. 11th place, it's my team, Gateshead. A lot of predictions I'm seeing for us, like they're so varied. I think I saw one earlier today that had us in second place, but then again I'm seeing one or two people saying that we'll drop off and get relegated. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think you look at the way we finished last season, we've managed to keep a lot of like those players that were maybe brought in later on in the season on, like you think like Marcus Denang, Ed Francis was obviously on loan last season. He's come back on a permanent deal, which I'm really pleased about. He's looked absolutely immense in pre-season, I must say. Callum Whelan, a sort of player that doesn't maybe do anything too spectacular, but maybe that calm head that you need. Midfielder Stephen Wern, like I'm really surprised he didn't get a move into the league actually. So I think that the overall like quality is there, and we do look a lot more comfortable on the ball and things like that. But I think what it's going to be is maybe at times a bit of a lack of numbers in the squad. Like you look at last season, like we had a bit of an injury crisis, and touch wood, that's not going to be the case again. But I think at times, like you think the way we're playing that, like where it's pretty much very high intensity from the word go. I think there might be a few games where I might get burned out a little bit, and we might end up drawing when you maybe think we should have won, or end up losing when you think we should have maybe got at least a point. But I do think like 11th place is going to be a solid season for us. It is progress on the last season, so I'd maybe take that, maybe along with a decent run in one of, if not both of the FA competitions. 10th place, I've gone for Solihull Moors, a team that I thought really underachieved last season. I think a lot of people in last season's predictions had them to be maybe the best of the rest outside of Wrexham and Notts County, and I think they've got to have learned a lesson. I must say, like I thought they were really underwhelming for the majority of the last campaign. I mean, they've also brought in a new manager from Banbury, Andy Wing. I think it's going to be a big step up for him, but obviously we played Banbury in the FA Trophy last season. I can tell you that they do play a nice brand of football, and if he can get like some more players in to complement that, then I think that could be something that will maybe work quite well in the long run. Like I think with Solihull, like historically they've been a bit of a team of dirty beggars, aren't they? But I think there'll be a much sort of cleaner side this year, and I think they will gradually start to push up the league again. Like, I think they are a club that wants to be in the Football League eventually, and so yeah, I think they're not going to get in the playoffs, but I do think it will be a pretty solid 10th place. 9th place, I've gone for York City. Now, for me, the jury is out a little bit on Matt Ugler's ownership. But what cannot be ignored is the fact that they have recruited well. You could say they've recruited wisely. Like you look at it, there's a lot of promising young players in there, but also quite a lot of players that have the maybe necessary experience of the National League and the Football League. So that maybe raises a question: why have I got them to maybe just about fall short? Well, I like Michael Morton, I really do. I think he's got a really bright future in management ahead of him, but I think this season he's going to get one or two lessons. I think there'll have quite a few games where I think he might just get a little bit tactically outsmarted, but I think, as I said, in the long run that's only going to be a good thing for his learning. So I think they will push on into the top half and get a 9th place finish. As I said, the jury is out with Ugler. I mean, what he's sort of saying, and he's saying the right things on Twitter and things like that, but he has got to back it up with actions. Like, he made a lot of mistakes at Yeovil. I think he needs to. There's been a lot of arguments between himself and Martin Hellier, the Yeovil owner, on Twitter over the last few days, and that sort of thing he needs to get that sort of thing out of his system. But I think with York it is going to be a long-term project, and I think for this year it'll be close but no cigar. 8th place, and maybe a team that you might be thinking that I've put maybe a bit too high, but AFC Fylde I think are going to be the ones that will be the best of the rest in terms of obviously not getting in the playoffs, but obviously the pretty solid top half. They've just come out of the National League North as champions, and I think they'll do pretty well. I think Nick Horton's an absolutely fantastic player. I'm really surprised he's not got a move into the Football League, I must say, and I think obviously look at some of the signings they've made as well, like maybe taking the best from the National League North. Like, I think Kieran Glynn from Scarborough is a very good player. So I think they will start getting back on track with their ambitions to get into the Football League. I mean, I think as I've alluded to here, they will only just fall short of the playoff positions, but I think once again they are heading in the right direction. I do think they need to get like a lot of the controversial stuff that's sort of been associated with the name over the last few years out of the system. And I think if they can do that, then I do think it is only going to be a matter of time before they do make that jump into the Football League. But for now, I think solid first season in the National League, but just missing out on the playoffs. So moving into that all-important top 7, and in 7th place and claiming the final playoff spot will be Eastleigh. I've been really impressed with their recruitment. They've always been the sort of team that have maybe bounced around the positions a little bit in the National League over the last few years, but I think the squad, you could say, could be equipped to make that jump into the playoffs. I think it is potentially going to be close between themselves, Fylde and York, but I think of those 3 teams, I think they're going to have just about enough. I think they signed a lad from Sutton, didn't they? I think that's a really impressive signing by them, so I'm going to put my head on the line a little bit and say that Eastleigh will be the ones that will claim that final playoff spot. 6th place, I've gone for Bromley. Now, Bromley have lost a few players over the summer. That's pretty notable, but I think with them, I'm not sure what their finances are like, but I think they've always been a club that have recruited well, and they've been a team that have been there or thereabouts over the last few years. Got in the playoffs last season. The season before didn't get in them, but did win the FA Trophy. So I think Andy Woodman is doing a really good job there. I've got to say, when we played them back end of last season, I thought they were probably the best team that we had faced in terms of the on-the-day performance. So I think, I don't think they'll maybe reach like massive heights, but I do think they will have enough to get in the playoffs. 5th place is Boreham. Now, what you see is what you get with Boreham, really. I think they've got an exceptional manager in Luke Garrard. I'm actually pretty surprised that a Football League team hasn't taken a chance on him yet. I think keeping him is always going to be a major factor for them. And they're a squad that have perhaps been together for quite a few years now. I think in terms of their approach, they're the sort of team that they don't score many goals, but they certainly don't concede many goals either. Like, look at their records over the last few years. They're the sort of team that you might lose 1-0 to away from home, but then maybe get a 0-0 or a 1-1 against when you play them at home. So it's I think over the course of the season they will have enough to get in the playoffs. As I say, they can be quite a frustrating team to play against, but there's nothing at all wrong with that. And I think they will get 5th place, but I think once again in terms of the playoffs, when they come about, I think it'll once again be a case of being the bridesmaid but not the bride. Fourth place I've gone for Oldham Athletic, and a lot of Oldham fans seem to think that they're going to maybe push on and maybe challenge for either the top spot or maybe even a second place. But I think they have recruited well. They've got a lot of players that maybe should still be playing in the Football League. I think they've got maybe a decent amount of squad depth, but I think they're possibly still a little bit light up front, I must say. So I think that could prove to be quite a major factor for them over the course of the season. But I do think there is enough in that team to get in the playoffs. I really do think that. I mean, I don't think it'll be enough to get the bye into the semi-final, but as I said, the squad has improved. They did have a much better second half of last season, I think, once they got to grips with the National League. And look, they have probably got the financial power to improve the squad, maybe if they're maybe lagging a little bit behind halfway through the season, to make that bit of an extra push into the playoffs. Third place I've gone for Barnet, and the loss of de Havilland to Peterborough United is a major one, but I think obviously I have kept a hold of the likes of Kabamba, so I think that's going to be a massive thing for them this season. I do like Dean Brennan as a manager. I thought he did a really terrific job last season, not only to get them in the playoffs, but of course to get them to the semi-final of the FA Trophy as well. I think teams that go on runs in either the FA Cup or the FA Trophy, a lot of the time seem to find that can maybe prove to be a bit too much of a distraction from the league, but they didn't really seem to let that happen. So I think a lot of these, a lot of the core of that squad is still there. So I think now that they've probably had that time together, I think they are going to be strong this season, and I think I do think they will push on and get one of the byes into the playoff semi-final. Second place I've gone for Woking. Much like Barnet, I really do rate the manager. I think Darren Sarley's done an absolutely immense job there, and Woking are one of those that predictions you see for them do sort of seem to be varying quite a bit. A lot of people like me have them up in second place, and quite a few others maybe have them dropping out of the playoffs. But I think they will be in the playoffs. I really do think that. I think Reece Brown still plays him, doesn't he? I think that's going to be considering he's going to have the full season now, unless a team in the Football League or whatever comes in for him. I think that's going to be a massive factor for him. The Kingfield is never an easy ground to go to or anything like that. Look, they play really good football. I was really impressed with them both times we came up against them last season. Then on the end they fell short in the playoffs, but I think there's enough in that squad to get in them again, and I think they'll do it with flying colours. I really must say that. Whether they'll deliver the goods when it comes to playoffs remains to be seen, but I think that's a video for when we get into the back end of the season, isn't it? So that just leaves one team, and I think the prediction to be champions for the vast majority of people, really, and it is Chesterfield, the best of the rest from last season, in terms of the fact that obviously Notts and Wrexham were just absolutely miles ahead of everyone else, but at the same time they very nearly stole the show from Notts County in that playoff final, and I think they've obviously done all the right things with recruitment. I think Paul Cook is going to get it right this year, and I think in terms of where they're at as a club, they've been through just about everything in the National League now. I think when they first came in, a lot of people took them to struggle, which they did, but then I think once they got to grips with the division, they're always going to be a really dangerous for just about anyone, really. So I think this is going to be their year, and I think they'll do it without having to go through the ordeal of the playoffs and stuff like that. So my tip for the league this year are Chesterfield. I mean, I don't think it's going to be as easy as maybe people are making out. I think the likes of Woking, Barnet and Oldham are gonna challenge them. I think it's important for Chesterfield this year that they try and steer clear of maybe some of the issues that have maybe come up at the club over the past couple of years, like stuff that's been associated with the name. I mean, some of it shouldn't really go into too much detail about, but yeah, I think they'll be absolutely sound this year, and my tip for who will be champions of the National League is Chesterfield. But that is that for this video. Let us know what you think of these predictions. Is there any that you agree with? Is there any teams you maybe have been a little bit harsh on? Is there any that you think are maybe a little bit on the high side? Just let us know. It's all discussion, isn't it? But I'll be back on Wednesday night with Crook Town versus Redcar Athletic. Obviously an absolutely disastrous start for Redcar Athletic in Northern League Division 1 on Saturday. Can they bounce back at the Millfield? We'll find out Wednesday. But until then, take care, cheers for watching. See you later.